My parents canceled my birthday party because my sister couldn't stand seeing me happy and threw a jealous tantrum. It started with a normal Tuesday and an empty sink. That day, the envelope was from the electric company. I knew it before I opened it because I had memorized the logos the way other teenagers memorized band names. The paper inside was not just a bill, it was a notice. Polite words for a not polite reality. Past due, it said. My mother hovered near the sink, pretending to scrub a plate that was already clean. My father was not home yet. My sister was in the living room scrolling on her phone, feet on the couch humming like nothing in the world could touch her. I read the number, felt my stomach drop, and then did what I always did. I solved it. Do you want me to call? I asked, already grabbing my phone. My mother exhaled in relief, so obvious it made me angry. Yes, please, she said. Just be nice. Be nice. To the company that was about to shut off our power because my parents could not be bothered to look at an email. I sat at the table with the phone pressed to my ear, listening to hold music, and I stared at the family photos on the wall, smiling faces, perfect lighting, proof that we looked like we had it together. My mother stood behind me, whispering the account number. When the person on the line finally answered, I used my calm voice, the voice that made me sound older than I was, the voice that hid the fact I was a teenager trying to keep my house lit. We can pay today, I said. My mother dug in her purse for a card, hands shaking. My sister glanced over and said, What is going on? Like the idea of bills was a foreign language. Nothing, my mother told her quickly, too sweet. Go back to what you are doing. The power did not get shut off that day. Everyone acted like that meant everything was fine. My mother went back to her day. My sister went back to her phone. My father came home later and asked, Did you handle that? Like it was a normal question for a parent to ask their child. I said yes. He said, Good. And that was how my life worked for years. Quiet emergencies, solved in silence, rewarded with a single word, and then immediately replaced by the next one. I was 17, running late, and still standing in our kitchen because the mail had shown up with that stiff, official look it always had. My mother had dropped it on the counter like it was a hot plate and said, Can you just check it? In the same cheerful voice people use when they are asking for a tiny favor, not handing you the weight of their entire adulthood. My name is Nadia. I was a teenage girl who looked older than I felt, mostly because I had to. We lived in a nice house in a nice neighborhood in a mid-sized town in the United States, the kind where people wave at each other at stop signs and swear they do not do drama, while collecting it like coupons. From the outside, our place looked stable. Front yard, 2-car driveway, a little flower bed my mother fussed over when she had company coming. Inside, the place ran on one quiet rule nobody ever said out loud. If something needed doing, it somehow became mine. My parents loved calling me the reliable one, the mature one, the old soul. They said it like it was a compliment, but it always landed like a job description. My sister, on the other hand, was sensitive, emotional, fragile. Everybody treated her like a fire alarm you were not allowed to test, only soothe. When we were little, it was small stuff. The wrong cereal, the wrong spoon, the wrong movie, the wrong seat in the back of the car. My sister cried, my mother rushed in like we were defusing a bomb, and my father sighed like peace was a scarce resource. If I complained, I got the speech. You are stronger. Do not start. Why can you not just let it go? Because I was a kid too, but sure, let us pretend I came out of the womb with a planner and a therapist. I did not have the language for it then, but later I learned the word people use for kids like me. Parentified. Back then I just thought I was useful. And in my house, being useful was the closest thing to being loved. I can tell you the exact moment it shifted from older sister stuff to this is not normal. I was in middle school, standing on a chair in our laundry room trying to read a shut-off notice taped to the door because my mother had shoved it there like it was shame she did not want to look at. I remember the paper felt heavier than it should have, like it carried a whole adult life inside it. My sister was in the hallway crying because a friend had not invited her to something. My mother was rushing back and forth with a glass of water and a blanket like heartbreak required medical equipment. And I, in the middle of it, was thinking about whether the lights were going to go out. It began with little tasks. Can you remind me about the appointment? Can you check if the bill came? Can you put that letter somewhere safe? Then it became, just call and ask what we owe. Then it became, can you set up the automatic payment? Like the tasks were building blocks, and one day I looked up and realized I had built the whole house. By 8th grade, my friends thought I was organized. Teachers loved me because I always turned things in early. Adults smiled at me in that special way they save for kids who seem like they will never cause trouble. I did not correct them. I could not exactly say, I am organized because if I forget one payment, my house turns into a war zone. There were nights I would be doing homework on my bed with my laptop open to a school essay and an email inbox full of bill reminders on the other side of the screen. I would pause mid-sentence in my essay to answer a message from my father. Did you send that invoice? Then I would walk down the hall, knock on my parents' door, and ask for a signature on a school form like I was their secretary. Sometimes I would find my mother sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers, staring at them like they were written in another language. I cannot, she would whisper, rubbing her temples. My head hurts. So I would sit down and do it. I would open, sort, label, file. I would tell her what was urgent and what could wait. I would make decisions I should not have had to make because the alternative was chaos. My father would thank me, but his thanks always had that undertone of entitlement. Good, he would say, like I had done what was expected. And if I ever asked him to handle something himself, he would get offended. Why are you acting like I do not do anything? He would snap, even though he had just handed me the task. The worst part was not the tasks. It was the way they treated my competence as proof I did not need care. If I was calm, I was fine. If I was upset, I was dramatic. If I cried, I was making a scene. My sister could cry and it was an emergency. I could cry and it was a manipulation. Once in 9th grade, I had a full breakdown in the bathroom after a teacher pulled me aside and said, "You look tired." I locked myself in a stall and covered my mouth so nobody would hear me. I remember thinking, I am 16 and I am already burned out. That should have scared my parents. But I did not tell them because I already knew how it would go. My mother would panic for a moment, then turn it into her feelings. My father would say I was too sensitive. My sister would roll her eyes. So I swallowed it and went back to class. That was my specialty. And my sister? She got rewarded for being loud. If she slammed a door, my mother called it expressing herself. If I sighed too loudly, my father told me to watch my attitude. When my sister forgot a project, my parents drove her supplies. When I forgot something once, my mother said, "You are the one who keeps lists. How did you mess up?" My mother hated paperwork the way some people hate spiders. She would see it and physically recoil. My father hated feeling managed, which was funny because he also hated managing himself. So the moment I showed any competence, they latched on. I learned how to sort mail and spot final notice envelopes before anyone else would even open them. I learned how to log into accounts and see what was due and what had been forgotten. I learned the difference between a late fee and a shut-off notice. I learned how to talk to customer service in a voice that sounded calm, even when I wanted to scream. I also learned that people will take you more seriously if you sound like you are not crying, which is a lesson I wish I never had to learn. When I was younger, my mother would stand behind me while I called places, whispering the information, and then speak into the phone at the end to confirm, "Yes, this is me." Like that made the whole situation less weird. Most of the calls were simple: confirming due dates, asking for a fee to be waived, setting up payment dates. After the second shutoff notice, my mother even put my name on the account as an authorized contact, like that made it normal. Back then, if you had the account number, the mailing address, and a steady voice, most people on the other end did not ask many questions. I made basic spreadsheets of what was due and when. Nothing fancy, just enough structure to keep the place from sliding into chaos. I kept the bill email organized because my parents acted like opening it would physically hurt them. I would flag deadlines, leave sticky notes, and text my father reminders he would ignore until the last second. Then he would rush around, stressed, acting like the universe had ambushed him with consequences. My father had a small business, and helping him looked like separating receipts, matching invoices and sending polite follow-ups to customers who were late paying. I was not doing taxes or anything complicated. I was doing the unglamorous glue work that keeps normal life from cracking. My mother's work was more scattered. Appointments, documents, phone calls. I kept her calendar from falling apart. I made folders. I wrote things down because no one else did. Meanwhile, my sister floated through all of it like rules were for other people. If she wanted something, it was framed as a need. If she messed up, it was framed as stress. If I messed up, it was framed as a flaw. Money made it worse. If my sister wanted new clothes, it was, she needs confidence. If I needed something for school, it was, do you really need it? If my sister wanted to go out, it was, she deserves it. If I wanted to go out, it was, be responsible. I learned to survive by becoming small, by not asking, by not needing, by not taking up space. And I tried. I really tried. I tried the nice approach. I tried the logical approach. I tried the, maybe if I explain it calmly, they will understand approach. I tried the, I will just swallow it. It is not worth a fight approach. Every approach ended in the same place. My sister got soothed, my parents got comfortable, and I got told to stop being dramatic. Sometimes the favoritism was obvious. My sister would demand something expensive, start crying if my parents hesitated, and somehow it would appear within days. Meanwhile, I would ask for something small, like money for a school event, and my mother would look at me like I was asking her to hand over a kidney. "You have a job," she would say. "So does she," I wanted to say. But my sister did not work. That was the point. She did not handle stress. She did not do well with pressure. She needed rest. She needed protection. She needed softness. I needed silence. I also needed sleep, but that was considered a personality flaw. By the time I was 16, I had a part-time job. Not because we were struggling, but because I needed money that was not tied to my mother's mood. I wanted my own bank account, my own little slice of freedom. I also started looking at university as less of a dream and more of an exit sign. I did not call it escape. I called it a plan, because that sounded safer. I worked after school and on weekends. Nothing glamorous, just regular person work. I would come home with aching feet and the smell of other people's lives on my clothes. And my mother would greet me with, "Good, you are home," like I existed for convenience. Then she would hand me a stack of mail. Or she would say, "I need you to look at the calendar." Or, "Your father needs you to email someone." Or, "Your sister is upset. Can you talk to her?" Talk to her. That one always made my stomach tighten, because talking to my sister meant absorbing her mood and smoothing the edges so my parents did not have to handle it. It meant being her emotional trash can. My sister, for her part, treated me like a service, not like a sister. She would sit on my bed without asking and say, "I need you to help me." And then when I said I was tired, she would roll her eyes and call me selfish. The irony, by the way, could power a small city. Around then, my sister started getting more creative with her fragile routine. She would have meltdowns over school projects, over friends, over clothes, over any tiny disappointment. She would cry so hard she could not breathe, and my parents would orbit her, soothing and bargaining and promising. Then they would turn around and snap at me because I was not being supportive. Supportive. That word still makes my eye twitch. When I was 17, I told myself my 18th birthday would be different. I was not asking for a parade. I was not asking for a fancy venue. I just wanted one day where I did not feel like background noise. So I planned a simple celebration at home. Nothing huge, just a small get-together. Some food, a cake, music, a handful of people who actually liked me. I planned it because planning was what I did. I borrowed folding chairs. I made a list. I kept it small on purpose so nobody could accuse me of being extra. I invited a couple of coworkers and a couple of school friends who had seen enough of my life to understand why I kept my joy quiet. My parents approved instantly, not because they were invested, but because it looked good and required zero effort from them. My mother kept saying, "This will be so cute," in the tone she used when she pictured herself telling the story later. My father nodded like he was signing off on a work email. My sister barely looked up from her phone. I did everything. I planned the food around what my parents would approve and what my sister would not complain about. I made sure there was something nice for photos because my mother loved proof. I ordered a cake in a flavor my sister claimed she did not hate. I cleaned the house because my mother cared more about what people thought than what I felt. Looking back, I realized the party was not really for me. It was another performance of, "We are a normal family." I was just the lead actor nobody thanked. 3 days before the party, my sister came home like a storm. She had had a luxury weekend trip canceled after her friend group blew up over drama. Normal disappointment for a normal person. In our house, it became a family emergency. She slammed the door, threw her bag, and announced she could not handle people and needed the house quiet that weekend. Empty. No movement. No attention on anyone else. My mother looked at me with that quick, guilty flicker, like she already knew what she was about to do and did not want to feel it. "We might need to adjust," she said. "Adjust what?" I asked, even though I knew. My father sighed. "It is just a party." "It is my 18th birthday," I said, and my voice did that thing where it goes too steady right before you cry. My sister turned her anger toward me like my existence was the problem. "I cannot deal with noise right now," she snapped. "I need space." "And I needed one day," I said before I could stop myself. My mother's eyes flashed. Do not do that, she warned, like I had pulled a knife. Your sister is hurting. My father rubbed his forehead. Can we not make this bigger? Bigger, sure. Because my birthday was the thing being made bigger, not my sister's canceled trip being treated like a national tragedy. Then my mother handed me the knife, like she always did. Can you just call everyone? She asked softly. Tell them we are rescheduling. We are not rescheduling, I said. My father stared at me. Nadia. My sister folded her arms. I am not having people here, she said, like she owned the house. And my parents, like always, chose the path of least resistance, which meant choosing her. So I called my friends, my coworkers, everyone. I tried to sound casual while my face burned. A few people were kind. A few sounded confused. One asked, "Is everything okay at home?" And I lied because I did not know how to say, "My family thinks I am replaceable." I boxed up the decorations I had bought with my own money. I put the cake order on hold. I packed away the folding chairs. I did it quietly because if I made noise, my mother would accuse me of performing my feelings. My sister got to stomp around and slam doors like she was in a movie. I got to be silent and mature. My birthday arrived and the house stayed quiet, like a museum dedicated to my sister's mood. No cake, no card, not even the bare minimum effort of pretending. The morning was so normal it felt insulting. My father drank coffee and scrolled on his phone. My mother did laundry. My sister slept late like she had earned it. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at a spot on the wood where someone had once spilled something and never cleaned it properly. I remember thinking, this is my life. I am a stain people work around. At some point, my sister wandered into the kitchen, poured coffee, and said, "Sorry about your thing. My thing." Like my birthday was an appointment she forgot. That night, my mother tried to comfort me without comforting me. "Do not take it personally," she said. I stared at her. "It is literally my birthday," I replied. "You are being intense," she said. "Your sister is fragile. It is just one day." That phrase, just one day, hit like a slap because it was not one day. It was a ranking, a public announcement of where I sat in the family hierarchy. After my birthday, I went through the motions at home for a few days, and it felt like acting in my own life. My mother would talk to me in that bright voice, like if she kept the tone upbeat, she could pretend nothing happened. My father would avoid my eyes. My sister would float around like she had won something and did not even have the decency to acknowledge the prize. I started noticing tiny humiliations I had trained myself to ignore, like the way my mother would introduce my sister to people with a little sparkle. "This is my baby," and then gesture vaguely at me like I was a coworker. Like the way my father would brag about my responsibility to his friends. But if I asked him for support, he would act like I was being needy. Like the way my sister would complain about me to my mother in the kitchen, on purpose, loud enough for me to hear. And my mother would just let it happen. That week, I took a walk around the neighborhood at night, alone, the air cold enough to sting. I stared at the houses with lights in the windows and wondered if other families were like mine, if other girls were out there carrying adult lives on their backs while everyone called them mature. I remember thinking, if I stay, I am going to turn into someone I hate. I am going to become either bitter and cruel or numb and empty. Either way, I lose. That was when the plan stopped being a vague fantasy and became a timeline. The next Monday at school, people asked about the party. I felt humiliated all over again because I had to explain it without sounding like I was making it up. And that is when something in me snapped from sadness into planning. I did not scream. I did not confront. I did what I had always done. I moved quietly. I asked a family I trusted through school if I could stay with them temporarily. They were not close relatives. They were my assistant coach's family from school, people who had watched me grow up on the sidelines and quietly noticed things. They asked me how long I needed, what my plan was, and what boundaries I wanted. When they said yes, it came with rules and a timeline. Not forever, not "we will save you," just a calm, normal offer of help. It was honestly disarming. I kept waiting for the catch. There was not one. Just boundaries. The thing my parents treated like an insult. I went to my job and asked for more hours. My manager looked surprised and then said yes because I was dependable. Of course I was. I met with a school counselor to keep my university plans moving without my parents controlling everything. I learned which forms I could handle myself and which ones I needed signatures for. And I started working around that reality like it was a puzzle. Then I gathered what I needed from my parents' house the way you gather supplies before a storm. Slowly, carefully, one item at a time. Documents, cards, personal things I could not replace. I wrote down important numbers on paper because I did not trust my family not to yank my phone plan out from under me as punishment. They would have called it concern, and my mother would have cried about how hard it was for her. I also did one more thing before I left. I stopped being the system without announcing it. I did not set up the next payment. I did not open the bill email. I did not remind my father. I did not track my mother's schedule. I just did not. I let the silence speak. They noticed fast. My mother asked where a document was. I said, "I do not know," and she looked at me like I had betrayed her. My father asked if I had answered an email. I said, "No," and he frowned like he could not compute it. My sister started watching me with that suspicious look she got when she sensed she was not the center. A few times my mother tried the softer manipulation. She would come into my room at night, sit on the edge of my bed, and say, "Are you okay?" in a voice that sounded caring until she added, "You have been acting strange." Like my emotional withdrawal was misbehavior. "I am tired," I would say. "Everyone is tired," she would reply, and then she would sigh dramatically as if she was the one carrying the world. The logistics of leaving were ugly in a quiet way. There was not a dramatic suitcase scene. There was me stuffing important papers into a folder and hiding it inside an old backpack like I was smuggling my own identity out of the house. There was me checking the glove compartment of my car for spare keys because my father had a habit of misplacing things when he was angry. There was me taking photos of my documents on my phone just in case the originals disappeared. Yes, I was paranoid. No, I do not regret it. I also had to do the embarrassing, practical stuff nobody talks about, like figuring out what a teenager who just turned 18 can actually afford. I sat in the parking lot at work on my break and wrote out a budget on the back of a receipt. Gas, food, phone, school fees, a little bit saved for emergencies. I realized I had been doing financial planning for my parents for years and had never done it for myself. That made me furious. The host family did not treat me like a charity case, but I treated myself like one anyway. I washed dishes before anyone asked. I vacuumed. I folded laundry. I was terrified of taking up space. The mother of the house pulled me aside one evening and said, "You do not have to earn your place here with chores. You just have to be respectful." I nodded like I understood, but my body did not believe it. Respectful in my parents' house meant obedient. Here, it meant normal. I kept expecting my parents to show up. I kept expecting my sister to show up, crying, demanding I fix something. I slept lightly for weeks, like my nervous system did not trust peace. At school, people noticed I was quieter. A friend asked if I was okay. I shrugged and said, "Family stuff," which is what everyone says when the truth is too messy to fit into a hallway conversation. My counselor helped me with the practical pieces, making sure my enrollment did not get derailed, talking through how to handle contact, reminding me that I was allowed to say no. I remember leaving her office and sitting in my car with my hands on the steering wheel, breathing like I had just run a mile. I did not know setting a boundary could feel like cardio. 2 weeks after my 18th birthday, the birthday they erased, I left. It was a quiet Saturday morning, early, before anyone could corner me. My hands shook the whole drive, not because I was scared of leaving, but because my body still believed leaving without permission was wrong. I kept expecting sirens or some dramatic scene, because my brain was trained to believe that making a choice for myself would trigger punishment. Nothing happened. The world stayed quiet. Those first months were a strange mix of freedom and withdrawal. People talk about moving out like it is this exciting step into independence. For me, it felt more like detox. My brain kept reaching for the familiar panic because panic was normal. Peace felt suspicious. At the host family's dinner table, people asked each other about their days and actually listened to the answers. No one competed to be the most wounded. No one turned every conversation into a test of loyalty. I remember one night the father of the house said, "I forgot to pay the water bill." And then he laughed, got up, and paid it. Just like that. No shouting, no shame spiral, no family meeting. I almost dropped my fork because I did not realize mistakes could be handled. The first time I told them I was thinking about university forms, the mother of the house sat with me and helped me sort them without making it about her. She did not say, "After everything I have done for you," the way my mother would. She just said, "Let us see what you need." It was so simple it made me ache. I also learned how much I did not know about myself. I had spent so long being the fixer that when no one needed fixing, I did not know what to do with my time. I would sit in my room and stare at my phone like it might give me instructions. I would start cleaning because cleaning was safer than feeling. I would catch myself listening for footsteps in the hallway, bracing for someone to call my name in that tone that meant, "Come carry my problem." Nobody called. I started working more hours. I started saving. I started letting myself buy small things without guilt. Shampoo I liked, a notebook that was not the cheapest option, a secondhand chair so I did not have to sit on my bed to do homework. I started learning what it felt like to build a life that did not require constant emergency management. It was not all inspirational. I had nights where I missed my parents in a vague, painful way, like missing a country you cannot live in anymore. I would think of my mother in the kitchen, of my father watching television after work, of the familiar creak of the stairs. And then I would remember my birthday, and the memory would harden into something protective. When graduation came, my parents tried to pull a classic move. My mother texted, "We are proud of you," and I stared at the words until they blurred. Proud. Not sorry, not aware. Proud. Like my achievements were something they could wear. They asked if they could come to the small ceremony. The host family asked me what I wanted. That question alone made me dizzy. I realized I had never been asked what I wanted in a real way before. So I chose something simple. I told my parents they could come, but I was not doing family photos, and I was not inviting extended relatives, and I was not pretending everything was fixed. My mother acted wounded. My father acted irritated. They came anyway, because appearances mattered to them more than comfort. My sister came too, and she spent the whole time complaining about being bored. When I walked across the stage, I did not look at my parents. I looked at the host family instead. They clapped the loudest. My throat tightened, and I had to smile so I did not cry on stage. Afterward, my mother tried to hug me for a photo. I stepped back and said, "Not today." The flash of anger in her eyes was so quick most people would have missed it. I did not. I had been trained to see it. That day taught me something I carried into everything after. I could stand in the same room as my family and still belong to myself. I could say no in public. I could survive the guilt. At the host family's house, there were rules, simple ones. Clean up after yourself. Let people know if you will be late. Do not bring chaos home. I followed them obsessively because I was terrified they would change their minds. I offered to pay rent as soon as I could, and they told me to save my money for school. I tried not to cry in front of them because I did not want to be a project. I just wanted to be a person. I left a simple note at my parents' place. I am safe. I am moving out. Please do not contact my school or my job. I will reach out when I am ready. It took exactly 1 day for my phone to start lighting up. My mother's first messages were the pretend concern ones. "Are you okay? Where are you?" Then it turned into the real purpose. "This is not like you. Come home. We need you." Need, not miss. Need. My father tried practical control. He cut off access to an account login I had used to check certain bills, thinking I would panic and come crawling back. Instead, I spent a miserable afternoon opening my own accounts, moving my deposits, and setting everything up in my name. It was exhausting, but it also felt like cutting a rope. He also tried the "you are being irresponsible" angle, which would have been hilarious if it had not made me so angry. "You cannot just leave," he said on the phone. "You have obligations." I almost laughed. Obligations. Like I was his employee who had quit without notice. "I am your daughter," I said, voice trembling. "Not your staff." He snapped, "Do not talk back." There it was. Not love, not concern, control. My mother tried guilt through other people. Relatives who barely spoke to me suddenly had opinions about family. My sister sent, "So you are abandoning us," like I was her parent. She also sent a voice message that was basically her sobbing and saying, "I cannot do this without you," which might have worked on me years earlier, but by then it felt like someone trying to drag me back into a pit with a rope made of tears. I changed passwords. I removed my devices from shared accounts. I set up my own phone plan. I blocked a couple of relatives. I stopped answering when the messages were not respectful. It was not clean. It was not easy. But it was the first time my life belonged to me more than it belonged to their chaos. The first week away was brutal in small ways. I felt guilty when I ate dinner because I was not earning it by solving someone else's problem. I felt anxious when my phone buzzed because my body still flinched like I was about to be punished. I also felt this weird, quiet relief that I did not know how to hold. Like someone handed me freedom and I did not know where to put it. At the host family's house, there were rules. Simple ones. Clean up after yourself. Let people know if you will be late. Do not bring chaos home. I followed them obsessively because I was terrified they would change their minds. I offered to pay rent as soon as I could, and they told me to save my money for school. I tried not to cry in front of them because I did not want to be a project. I just wanted to be a person. Meanwhile, back at my parents' house, the place started to wobble. Without me, my parents tried to buy organization, cleaning help, someone to do paperwork. It did not last. They did not like being told what to do, and my sister sabotaged anything that felt like limits. She would complain the person was judging her. She would pick fights. She would make the house tense until my parents gave up, because giving up was their main skill. Bills got missed, emails piled up, deadlines slipped. My father lost track of customer payments. My mother forgot appointments and then blamed the calendar. I heard it all secondhand through texts that were meant to guilt me back into place. When I finally answered one call, my father did not say, "We want you back." He said, "We are falling behind." "We," I repeated. "Do not be dramatic," he snapped. "Canceling my 18th birthday was not dramatic?" I asked. Silence. "We were trying to keep the peace," he said. "And now you do not have peace," I replied. "You have consequences." For a while, there was a tense truce. My parents kept trying to pull me in with little hooks. "Can you just tell me which password we used? Can you just remind me what day that bill is due? Can you just come by and help for an hour?" Every "just" was a trap. If I did one, it would become 2, then 3. Then my life would slide back into the old role. So I started saying no more often. My voice shook the first few times. Then it got steadier. My mother hated that. She said I was changing, like that was a crime. A few months after I left, the first public crack hit. My sister got caught trying to walk out of an expensive store without paying for a bag of items. It was not subtle. Security stopped her at the entrance. She made a scene. She cried. She accused them of targeting her. My mother rushed in, frantic, trying to charm her way out of it. My father arrived angry and embarrassed, wearing that tight smile he used when he wanted people to think everything was fine. The simplest real-world outcome happened. My sister got a warning. My parents paid for the items on the spot, apologized until their faces hurt, and the store still issued a trespass notice so she could not come back. No big courtroom drama, just humiliation, consequences, and whispers. My mother called me crying, more about how humiliating it was for her than about what my sister did. "People saw," she kept saying. "People are talking. Maybe they should talk," I said, before I could stop myself. My mother's voice sharpened. "If you were here, this would not have happened." I stared at the wall, feeling that old surge of rage. "If I were there," I said slowly, "you would be using me as your shield, so you would not have to face what she is doing." She went quiet for a beat, and then she did what she always did. She rewrote it. "You are being cruel," she whispered, like my honesty was violence. After the store incident, my mother's obsession with people talking went into overdrive. She stopped waving at neighbors the same way. She started over-explaining everything. If someone asked, "How are you?" she would launch into a long story about how stressful life was and how kids these days had so much pressure. It was like she thought if she talked enough, she could build a wall out of words. My sister, meanwhile, acted like the whole thing was a personal attack on her. She told anyone who would listen that she was targeted. She swore she did not mean to do anything wrong. Then, in the next breath, she would demand something to make her feel better. New clothes, a new bag, a dinner out. And my parents, desperate to calm her down and desperate to soothe themselves, would give it. I got messages from neighbors I barely knew, little checking-in texts that felt more like gossip fishing than concern. I learned to answer with 2 sentences and then stop. I learned to put my phone face down on the table and take a shower without it. That was harder than it should be. A couple of times I drove by my parents' old house out of habit and then hated myself for it. The yard looked the same, the driveway looked the same. From the outside, it still looked like stability. That is the thing about families like mine. They can be rotting inside and still look perfect from the street. That was when the neighborhood narrative war got louder. My mother and sister spread their version through group chats and driveway conversations. In their story, I was cold, ungrateful, jealous, dramatic. They said I had run off like a rebellious teenager, which was almost funny because I had never been rebellious a day in my life. I had been obedient to the point of self-erasure. And yes, people found my job easily. It is a small town. My mother told a relative where I worked because she was worried. That relative showed up at my counter one afternoon and tried to corner me with a guilt speech in front of customers. I kept my voice low, said, "This is not the place." And when they would not leave, my boss stepped closer, and the relative finally backed off. The message was clear. They were willing to embarrass me in public to pull me back into line. That night, I started documenting everything. Screenshots, dates, notes. Not because I wanted a legal war, but because I needed proof of reality when my family tried to rewrite it. I was not looking for a judge. I was looking for my own sanity. Around the same time, my parents threw money at my sister again, enrolling her in an expensive career program that promised quick results. My mother said it like it was a rescue plan. "This will give her direction," she insisted. My sister lasted a few weeks. She fought with instructors. She stopped showing up. She quit. My parents never got a refund. They just stopped mentioning it, like silence could erase wasted money. Then came the financial collapse, and it was not one explosion. It was a leak that turned into a flood. The financial unraveling had a rhythm, and I hated how familiar it felt, because I had seen the early signs for years, and nobody listened when I pointed them out. It started with my mother texting me at night, "Do you remember the login for the utility?" I would stare at the message and feel my fingers itch to fix it. I wanted to reply with the password and a cheerful, "Here you go," like the old version of me would have. Instead, I would type, "You can reset it," and then sit there with my heart racing, like I had just committed a crime. Then my father tried the softer approach, which was new for him. He would say, "I know you are upset, but you are good at this." He would make it sound like a compliment. He would say, "Just help us get caught up, and then we will be fine," as if the problem was temporary, not structural. The truth was, without me, they did not just lose a helper. They lost the person who noticed patterns. They lost the one who saw the small leaks before they became floods. My sister did not notice patterns. She noticed feelings, and she treated feelings like emergencies. I heard about the first big credit dip when my mother called, voice tight, and said, "Something is wrong with the card." "What do you mean?" I asked, already knowing. "It is higher than it should be," she whispered. "Did you look at the charges?" I asked. "I do not want to," she admitted. That right there was the whole problem in one sentence. When my father finally did look, he confronted my sister and she cried and said she panicked and needed it and was going to pay it back. She promised to get a job. My mother hugged her and said, "It is okay, baby." My father yelled, my sister screamed, and then, eventually, my parents paid it down because the idea of their credit being damaged scared them more than the reality of my sister never changing. Except paying it down did not stop her. It just taught her the ceiling. That was when she got sneakier with the bank account. My father had an old laptop he kept around for backup, and it still had their bank login saved because he believed in convenience more than security. My sister used it to move small amounts into her account in a way that did not trigger panic right away. Not huge transfers, just enough to drain them while they were not paying attention. They did not have text alerts turned on, and my parents avoided checking the account like looking at it could summon bad luck. When my father noticed, he blamed the bank. When my mother noticed, she blamed stress. When my sister noticed, she said nothing. And then she pushed them into an opportunity, some friend of a friend local scheme that promised fast returns if they acted now. My parents wanted to believe she was finally doing something smart, so they handed over money they could not afford. It vanished. My sister swore she would fix it, then cried, then got mad, then said everyone was attacking her. Same routine, different stakes. By the time collections started calling, my mother's voice had changed. It had this brittle edge, like she was trying to hold herself together with tension. My father started coming home later and later. My parents stopped sleeping well. I could hear it in the way they spoke. Short, sharp, exhausted. I should have felt vindicated. I did not. I felt sick. Not because they did not deserve consequences, but because a part of me still wished they would wake up before everything burned down. Yes, that part of me is annoying. I know. Over the next 6 months, my parents' accounts started wobbling. Late notices, recurring charges they did not recognize, a credit balance that kept creeping up. Part of it was the credit card. My sister was an authorized user for emergencies, and she treated it like a personal allowance, racking up charges and even taking cash advances. Every time my parents confronted her, she cried and said she needed it, and my mother folded like paper. The other part was those small transfers from the old laptop, vanishing right after payday, just enough to blend into grocery charges and subscription fees so it looked like normal life instead of theft. Collections started calling, fees stacked, their credit dropped. My father lost clients because he was distracted, behind, unstable. My mother took extra shifts. They sold things, furniture, tools, anything worth quick cash. The nice house became impossible, And they downsized to a smaller place in the same area because my mother could not stand the idea of starting over somewhere else. When the downsizing happened, my mother tried to make it my job again. She called and said, "We have to pack." Like the word "we" included me by default. She said, "I do not know what to do with all this stuff," as if she had never made a decision in her life. "Hire movers," I said. "We cannot afford that," she snapped, immediate and sharp, and then softened when she realized she had shown her real tone. "I mean, it is expensive." I almost told her, "You could afford a lot of things," when it was for her. Instead, I said, "I am not available for this." She got quiet, then did the classic pivot. "So you are really going to let your father hurt his back?" she asked, like my refusal was a physical threat. My father, when he called later, did not ask for packing help. He asked for me to handle the paperwork of changing addresses, updating accounts, setting up new utilities. That was what they meant by help. Not boxes. Systems. I felt my old reflex flare up so hard it made me nauseous. The part of me that had been trained to prevent disasters screamed, "If you do not do this, they will mess it up." And then the newer part of me answered, "Let them mess it up. Let them learn." So I offered one narrow, controlled thing. I sent them a list of steps in one message. Change address with the post office. Update the bank. Update the utilities. Set reminders. That is it. No calls. No ongoing management. No access to my accounts. No, just one more thing. I sent the list and then turned my phone off. They survived. Not gracefully, not without complaints, but they survived. I drove past the old house once after it was empty, just to prove to myself it was real. The yard looked too neat. Like the house did not know what had happened inside it. For a moment, I pictured my mother taking photos of the empty rooms, mourning the image more than the life. I pictured my father blaming everyone but himself. I pictured my sister complaining about having to live somewhere smaller, like the size of the rooms was what mattered. I did not stop. I did not go in. I kept driving. It was not instant. It did not happen in a week. It happened in stages, like watching a slow-motion accident you cannot stop. One missed payment, then another, then a letter, then a conversation behind a closed door. Then my mother calling and saying, "We might have to move," like it was the weather, and not the result of years of enabling. Their marriage cracked under blame. My father blamed my mother for coddling. My mother blamed my father for being harsh. They both blamed my sister in private and then soothed her when she cried. Because that was their addiction. The cycle. A little over a year passed in that tense distance. My life got steadier in the boring ways that matter. I moved from the couch to a shared apartment. I kept working. I stayed in school. I started eating dinner without feeling like I had to earn it by solving someone else's crisis. I learned how to say no without attaching an apology. I still felt guilty sometimes, but the guilt started to feel less like truth and more like an old reflex. Then a relative texted, "Your parents want to talk. It is serious." I agreed to meet them in a small coffee shop near campus. Neutral ground. Public. Short meeting. My rules. When I walked in, I almost did not recognize them, not because they looked wildly different, but because they looked worn down by reality. My father's shoulders were slumped. My mother's eyes were puffy. They sat close together like allies, which was new. My sister was not there. Also new. My mother stood like she did not know whether to hug me. I did not hug her. I sat. My father said, "Thank you for coming," and I almost laughed because politeness sounded foreign coming from him. My mother started talking around the point. Embarrassment, bills, shame, stress. Finally, my father said it, blunt. "We need help. Not love, not reconciliation. Help." I took a breath. "Help doing what?" I asked. My mother whispered, "We are drowning." I let the silence sit because I needed them to feel it. Then I said, "I am not moving back. I am not managing your bills. I am not being your buffer. If you want contact, it has to be on my terms." My father nodded slowly. My mother looked scared. I laid out conditions like a practical adult because emotional bargaining is how my family trapped people. Short meetings in public, respectful communication, no relatives used as messengers, no showing up at my work, no gossip campaigns in the neighborhood, no money requests, no emergency demands, and, most importantly, stop rewarding my sister's crises. My mother started to say, "She is struggling," and I cut in. "She is always struggling," I said, "and somehow it always becomes my job." My father asked, "What do you want us to do?" Give her real consequences, I replied. Require real work. Stop treating her like glass. My mother's eyes filled. She is our daughter. And I am your daughter, I said. And my voice broke despite my best effort. It made me feel 12 again. We sat like that for a moment, all three of us staring at a table like it was a battlefield. Then the universe decided to test my boundaries immediately. My sister walked into the coffee shop. She slid into a chair like she owned the air. She did not look fragile. She looked annoyed, like we were inconveniencing her. So this is happening, she said. I did not agree to meet with you, I replied. She rolled her eyes. Of course you did not, she said. You always act like you are above everyone. And then she went straight to the family language. So are you going to help or not? No, I said. You are selfish, she snapped. You left us to deal with everything. You mean you left them to deal with your mess, I said, and my hands shook under the table. My sister's face tightened. It was not my fault. They saved the password. They put my name on the card. My father's voice cut sharp, louder than I expected. Stop, he said. My sister blinked like she had been slapped by the word. You caused this, my father continued. You did. My mother flinched. For half a second I saw her glance toward me like she wanted to defend me, like some part of her knew this was not fair. But habit dragged her eyes back to my sister, the way it always had. My sister's eyes widened. For a second, the whole table held its breath. Then my sister did what she always did. She pivoted into victimhood and money. Fine, she snapped. If you are not helping, can you at least give me some money just this once? I just need a little to get caught up. No, I said again. My sister hissed. You are ruining this family. And that was when I stood, chair scraping loud, people looking over, my heart pounding like I had done something wrong when I had not. This, I said to my parents, voice shaking, is exactly why I have conditions. If you let her speak to me like this, I am leaving. My mother looked panicked. My father's jaw clenched, but he did not tell me to sit back down. That was something. My sister sneered. So controlling. I am not controlling, I replied. I am leaving. And I did. I blocked my sister again. I blocked my mother for weeks because she kept sending soft excuses like, she did not mean it, and she is hurting, like my pain was optional. Then my father called. His voice sounded different, tired, not commanding. We are trying, he said. He told me they had told my sister no, that she needed to work, that she could not live with them unless she followed rules, that she screamed and left, that my mother wanted to chase her, and he told her they could not keep doing that. I did not feel triumphant. I felt exhausted. I felt sad. I felt relief that tasted like grief. Over the next months, contact became small and conditional. Short calls, public meetings, boundaries enforced like traffic laws. My mother slipped sometimes. I corrected her. My father was awkward but steadier. My sister popped up with new numbers, asking for money. Sometimes my parents held firm. Sometimes they wobbled. When they wobbled, I cut contact for a set period and then tried again. By my early 20s, I was not the system anymore. I was just me. Imperfect, sometimes bitter, still impulsive, but finally living a life that did not require me to manage someone else's chaos to deserve oxygen. One of the last tests came on a random Tuesday when my mother called in an overly casual voice and said, "Quick question, do you still have that spreadsheet thing for the bills?" My chest tightened instantly. Old reflex. "What did you do when I told you to hire someone?" I asked. She sighed. "We cannot afford that." "You could not afford the expensive program you paid for her either," I said quietly. "You chose where the money went." Silence. Then the old hook. "You are so good at it. It would help us." I closed my eyes. "No," I said, calm. "I can show you how to set reminders one time. That is it." My mother snapped. "So you will just let us drown?" "I am not the one holding your head underwater," I replied. "I am just not the one pulling you out anymore." 2 days later, my father texted, "We figured it out." After that coffee shop meeting, I cried in my car in the parking lot, hands shaking on the steering wheel like I was back to being 17 again. I did not cry because my sister yelled at me. That was normal. I cried because my father saying stop had cracked something open. It was proof that he could see reality when it cost him enough. It was also proof that he chose not to see it for years, when the cost was me. I drove home to my apartment and took the longest shower of my life, like I could wash off the whole family dynamic. Then I sat on my bed and stared at my phone waiting for the backlash. It came, of course. My mother left a voicemail the next day in that soft, trembling tone that used to pull me back. "I am just hurt," she said. You were so harsh. She is your sister. My chest tightened. Old reflex, old guilt. So I did something new. I played the voicemail again and listened for the content, not the tone. The content was, she wanted me to accept disrespect so my sister did not have to feel discomfort. Same as always. I texted back, I am not discussing this. If you want contact, it needs to be respectful. I am taking space. Then I actually took space. I did not pick up when she called again. I did not respond when she sent a long message about how families forgive. I went to work. I went to class. I bought groceries. I did boring life things while my phone buzzed. And every time I did not answer, I felt both powerful and terrified. When my father called a week later, he did not demand. He asked, "Can we talk?" He said. We talked in short pieces. He told me details I had not known, how my sister had stormed out and then come back demanding money, how my mother had hidden cash in a drawer just in case, how my father had started locking the laptop in his car because he did not trust anyone in the house. He sounded embarrassed saying it. He sounded older. He sounded like someone who finally realized he could not keep letting one child burn down the house to keep the other child quiet. I told him I was not going to be their safety net. I told him I could love them from a distance, but I could not be consumed by them. He did not argue. That was new too. Over the next year, we built something fragile. Not closeness, not warmth, something more like a truce. My mother would test boundaries in small, sneaky ways. She would ask questions that sounded innocent, but were really attempts to pull me back into managing. What day do you pay your rent? How do you keep track of things? What bank do you use? I learned to answer vaguely or redirect. My father would actually stop her sometimes, which still shocks me when I remember it. My sister tried a few times to get me alone. She would message from new numbers, then pretend she was reaching out like a normal person. The second I replied, she would pivot to money or blame. I stopped replying. Eventually, I learned to spot her writing style even when the number was new. Yes, my own sister was basically spam. The last boundary test was almost funny, in a dark way. My mother called and said, "I have a question about the calendar app on my phone." My skin crawled. I said, "You can search it." She sighed, dramatic. "You are so cold now." I laughed. One sharp breath. "No," I said. "I am just not available for unlimited access anymore." She got quiet, then tried one more guilt hook. "You used to care." "I still care," I replied. "I just care about myself, too." There was a pause, and then she said, "Very small. I do not know how to do that." That line almost broke me, because it was honest. It was also not my responsibility to fix. So I told her one thing she could actually do. Write down appointments on paper. Set one reminder. Start small. Then I ended the call. I did not rescue her. And she survived. That was it. No apology, no gratitude, just a small, ordinary proof that they could survive without consuming me. Sometimes people ask me, "Do you talk to them now?" Like there is a clean answer. The truth is messy. Some weeks my mother can be almost normal. She will ask about my classes, about my work, and for a few minutes I can pretend we are just a regular mother and daughter. Then she will slip and say something like, "Your sister is having a hard time." And my muscles will tense like she is about to hand me the rope again. I have learned to notice the moment the conversation turns into a trap. I have learned to say, "I am not discussing her," and change the subject. If my mother pouts, I let her pout. If she gets sharp, I end the call. If she sends a guilt message later, I do not rush to soothe it. That sounds cold when I write it out, but it is the only way I can stay in my own life. And honestly, my life is good. Not perfect, not dramatic, just good. I have routines that belong to me. I have friends who do not confuse love with obligation. I have a home that does not run on emergency. Last I heard, my sister was still drifting between friends' couches, occasionally trying new numbers like a bad habit, and my parents were finally saying no more often than not. Our relationship stayed fragile. Amends in small doses, boundaries enforced in real time. Some months we talk a bit more. Some months we barely talk at all. If they respect the limits, we have something that resembles a family. If they do not, I disappear again. And for the first time in my life, that does not feel cruel. It feels necessary.